Before multi-million-dollar contracts, before primetime NFL games, before black quarterbacks became Super Bowl champions, there was a man whose name most football fans have never heard. He was fast, he was tough, he was brilliant, and he could play almost every position on the field. Running back, quarterback, defensive back, punter, kick returner. But George Taliaferro was more than an athlete. In 1949, he became the first African-American ever drafted by a National Football League team. And just a few years later, he became one of the first black men to start at quarterback in the modern era of professional football. Yet today, his story is often left out of the history books. This is the story of George Taliaferro, the forgotten pioneer who helped change the NFL.
Chapter 1. Born into a Divided America. George Taliaferro was born on January 8, 1927, in Gates, Tennessee. He came into the world during a time when segregation shaped almost every part of American life. For many black children, opportunity was limited before life even began. But George's path would eventually lead north to Gary, Indiana. There, he attended Roosevelt High School, a place that helped shape his athletic talent and his character. Gary was a working-class city. Steel mills, hard labor, discipline, determination. And on the football field, George began showing something special. He was not just good at one thing. He could run, he could throw, he could defend, he could kick, he could lead. That versatility would become his trademark. But the world he was preparing to enter was still not ready to fully accept a black man as a leader on the football field.
Chapter 2. Indiana University and the Weight of Prejudice. In 1945, George Taliaferro arrived at Indiana University. He joined the Indiana Hoosiers football team during one of the most important periods in the school's athletic history. At Indiana, Taliaferro faced the prejudice of the time, and even among teammates, there were conflicting attitudes about how he was treated on and off the field. But George did not allow the racism around him to define him. As a freshman in 1945, Taliaferro helped lead Indiana to its first undefeated Big Ten Conference championship. He became the leading rusher on the team, and he led the Big Ten in rushing, becoming the first African-American to do so. He was changing what people believed was possible. And while George Taliaferro was making history on the field, he became part of a legacy of achievement off the field. On March 7, 1948, he was initiated into Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Inc., a brotherhood whose motto is achievement in every field of human endeavor. That motto fit his life perfectly. Because George Taliaferro's achievement was not limited to football. He was breaking barriers.
Chapter 3. The 1949 NFL Draft. Then came 1949, the National Football League Draft. At that time, the NFL, like the rest of the country, was still struggling with race. Black players had been excluded from the league for years. Opportunities were rare. Respect was not guaranteed. But in the 13th round of the 1949 NFL Draft, with the 129th overall pick, the Chicago Bears selected George Taliaferro. That moment made history. George Taliaferro became the first African-American ever drafted by an NFL team. But there was a twist. Taliaferro did not play for the Bears. Instead, he signed with the Los Angeles Dons of the All-America Football Conference. Why? Because he had already made a commitment, and George Taliaferro was a man of his word. In Los Angeles, he continued proving that he belonged. He played halfback, punted, passed, and returned kicks. He was a complete football player, and that made him one of the most valuable athletes of his time.
Chapter 4. A Star in a Changing NFL. When the All-America Football Conference folded, Taliaferro moved into the NFL. He signed with the New York Yanks in 1950, and once again, he showed the football world how much he could do. That same year, George Taliaferro also began an important new chapter in his personal life. On November 24, 1950, he married his wife, Viola. Together, they would build a life rooted in family, education, service, and community. And on the football field, George continued making history. In his first NFL season, he started every game. He led the team in rushing touchdowns, he caught passes out of the backfield, returned kicks, and even threw touchdown passes. This was football before the modern era of specialized positions. Players were expected to do more than one job. But George Taliaferro did almost everything. He was a running back with the vision of a quarterback, a passer with the toughness of a fullback, a return man with breakaway speed, and a defensive player who could change momentum. In 1951, he earned his first of 3 Pro Bowl selections in a row. Every time he stepped on the field, he was proving that black athletes did not just belong in professional football. They could lead it.
Chapter 5. The first black quarterback start in the modern era. In 1953, George Taliaferro was playing for the Baltimore Colts. The team was struggling. The season was difficult. But on November 22, 1953, history happened again. During a game against the Los Angeles Rams, Colts quarterback Fred Enke was injured. The team needed someone to step in. George Taliaferro took the field at quarterback. That day, he became the first black player to start at quarterback in the NFL after the league's color barrier had fallen. Think about what that meant. In an era when many people still doubted whether black athletes could lead from the quarterback position, George Taliaferro stood in the huddle. He called plays. He took the hits. He carried the responsibility. And even though the Colts lost the game, George delivered one of the most powerful performances of his career. He rushed for 136 yards and scored a touchdown. He did not just fill in. He made history. Long before names like Doug Williams, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts became part of football history, George Taliaferro helped open the door.
Chapter 6. More than football. But George Taliaferro's story did not end when his playing career ended. After football, he continued to serve. He earned a master's degree in social work from Howard University. He taught at the University of Maryland. He became Dean of Students at Morgan State University. He returned to Indiana University as a professor and special assistant to the university president. He also worked with Big Brothers Big Sisters, helped mentor young people, and advised formerly incarcerated individuals as they adjusted back into society. The same man who broke barriers on the football field spent his later years helping others break barriers in life. That is the part of George Taliaferro's life that deserves just as much attention. Because he was not only a pioneer in professional sports, he was a builder of people.
Chapter 7. Honors, Family, and Final Years. In 1981, George Taliaferro was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. It was a recognition of what he had done at Indiana University and what his career meant to the game. He and his wife, Viola, raised 4 daughters while continuing to make an impact far beyond the football field. Viola Taliaferro became a lawyer and later a judge, creating her own powerful legacy of leadership. Their family story reflected the same values that shaped George's life: perseverance, excellence, service, and achievement. Together, they represented excellence beyond athletics. George Taliaferro lived a long life. He died on October 8, 2018 in Mason, Ohio at the age of 91. By then, the NFL had changed dramatically. Black players had become stars. Black quarterbacks had become champions. Black athletes had become the face of the league. But one of the men who helped make that future possible remained far less known than he should be.
Closing. The stories left behind. George Taliaferro
was more than the first African American drafted by an NFL team. He was a trailblazer, a competitor, a scholar, a mentor, a man who carried history every time he touched the football. He played in a time when opportunity was limited. He excelled in a time when recognition was denied. And he served long after the cheering stopped. His name may not be mentioned enough, but his impact is still felt every Sunday. This is George Taliaferro, the forgotten pioneer who helped change the NFL. And this is the Hidden Black Legacy Project, the stories left behind.
George Taliaferro's story reminds us that legacy is built not only in moments of fame, but through courage, service, and the doors we open for others. Next month, we take the Hidden Black Legacy Project beyond the documentary and into the places where history actually happened. Using original on-location footage, we retrace the story of Charles Burnham Leake, who worked nearly 50 hours sending telegrams after the devastating Ashtabula train disaster of 1876. We visit the actual landmarks connected to his life and walk the ground where courage, tragedy, and history still speak. Coming next month, Charles Burnham Leake, returning to the scene of an American tragedy. The Hidden Black Legacy Project, the stories left behind.